This story takes place in November of 2017. I was 18. I'm a very short girl, only about 4'10", and I get anxious when someone even looks at me in a way to suggest they might not like me. So needless to say, I'm incredibly non-confrontational. My friend and I were out shopping. It was something we do maybe every few months, just to bond, since we didn't have much time to hang out due to college. She's just like me, barely scraped 5'1" and very non-confrontational. It's probably why we became friends. On every shopping trip we would find ourselves in Ann Summers. We're both overly endowed and struggled to find bras anywhere to use. And Ann Summers always had great sales, so we'd grab at the cheap bras while we could. This shopping trip wasn't any different. We browsed shops until we got to Ann Summers. But that's when things took a bit of a turn. I'd barely stepped foot into the shop when a woman with some sort of Slavic accent stopped me. Her finger jammed into my chest. "Spit the gum out," she demanded. Assuming she was an employee, I gave a very sheepish "I'm really sorry" and ran out of the shop to spit the gum out and throw it away. When I went back in, I realized that this woman was not an employee. She was a customer who was browsing and happened to be near the door when my friend and I entered the shop. It should have been obvious to me at the time. No salesperson would behave like that. Not one that wanted to keep their job anyway. But I kept my head down when I walked past her, holding my breath in hopes she wouldn't notice me again. She didn't, and I thought I was in the clear. My friend and I browsed the shop, trying to avoid the woman. But the shop wasn't very big, probably only 15 feet by about 18 feet. So eventually I ended up at the sales stand by the door where she had been stood. I tried to keep my distance while browsing. I was looking at the price tags, but realized I didn't know what the discount was, so I leaned over slightly to check the discount sign. It's important to note that this woman had a pushchair, which is a stroller for the Americans. You'd think that she maybe had a child in this pushchair, but no. It was full of plastic carrier bags. I didn't look too much at it, but I could tell that everything in there was double bagged and tied shut. Whatever was in those bags, she wanted to protect. This sense of protection became very relevant, because when I leaned over to look at the discount sign, I was leaning slightly close to her pushchair. It was still about 3 feet away, but apparently this was too close. The woman was on the other side of the chair, but the moment she saw me, she ran around it to where I stood. She hit me in the face. It was somewhere between a slap and a punch. I couldn't quite tell because I was in shock. All I knew is that it hurt. "Watch the personal space," she hissed in my ear. I apologized to her. This woman just hit me and I apologized to her. I regret it now, but at the time I didn't want to provoke her any further. Not that I knew what I did to provoke her in the first place. I turned around and ran to the back area, grabbing my friend's hand and pulling her with me. The back area was separated by a tiny wall that only stretched halfway across the shop, since they stored the adult toys there and wanted to keep them out of sight of the general public. I stood there holding my friend's hand and shaking as I whispered, "She just hit me," to my friend. We stood there for a good minute in silence. My friend was positioned in a way that she could see the rest of the store, while I hid behind the wall. "She's gone," my friend told me. I let out a breath that I didn't know I was holding. "Can we just stay in here for a while?" I asked my friend, worried that the woman would be outside waiting for me. The front of the store was open, but she could have easily just been a couple of feet down the road and out of sight, waiting for me to leave. My friend agreed and we slowly browsed the shop again. About 5 minutes later, we got to the counter to check out. The girl working the counter looked outside and then back at us. "That woman has been in here for 30 minutes. I didn't know what to do," she told the two of us. "What did she say to you?" "She told me to spit out my gum when we first came in, and then she hit me because I was too close to her," I told her. "She hit you?" The worker was wide-eyed. "If I had known that, I would have called security. I'm so sorry." I smiled and shrugged. "It's fine." It wasn't really fine, but it wasn't the worker's fault. She didn't look much older than me, and I wouldn't have known what to do in that situation either. Still shaken up, my friend and I made our way out of the store. I looked around but didn't see the woman. "Can we go home now?" I asked my friend. We hadn't finished browsing all of the shops, but I was so paranoid that we bump into the woman again. She agreed and we got the bus home. When I got home, my parents encouraged me to report this incident to the police. I called the non-emergency line and their answer was basically, "Well, what do you expect us to do about it?" Unless I went back to the Ann Summers and requested the security footage, which I wasn't sure if they actually had, they wouldn't do anything. It's been just over 3 years now. I'm sure that the woman was likely to have been homeless and/or on drugs. It's the only explanation I can think of for the carrier bags and her protectiveness. It was either everything she owned or drugs, or both. So to the possibly homeless, possibly drugged up woman who hit me, I hope that the current state of the world is treating you well, and you're finally getting the personal space you wanted. But let's not meet again.